Hello there.
Hi, bitches. What up?
I'm back again. Again.
Again.
Can't get rid of me now.
Shit. Well.
We're here again in the pod nursery.
Yes.
This is Hot for Justice. We won't, podcast. We won't forget to say that this time, like we usually do.
Most times. That's Jessica.
And that's Jamie.
Hey!
I almost said that's Jessica, but that's not true.
I am not Jessica.
I am.
I do get called Jessica a lot, though.
Really?
Yeah, like, people, like, for whatever reason will have a brain fart with my name, and they're like, Jessica. And I'm like, absolutely not.
I get called Jennifer a lot. Like, people will email me, even work emails, where
Jesus Christ.
literally my name is in my signature. People be like, hi, Jennifer. And I'm like, really? Do you not pay attention?
Yeah, like, my work email literally has my first name in it.
Yeah.
And it's in my signature.
Yep.
And it gets bastardized every fucking day.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
It's rough. Mine's not in my email. It's my just initial, but it's in my signature block.
Yeah.
Kills me.
Yeah.
But,
I think I've seen every possible spelling of Jamie.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And words that aren't even close to Jamie.
What's funny is when I get emails, sometimes potential students will address my, foreign international students will address me as Dr. Penrose, and I'm like, I'm here for it.
Oh yeah, I get called Dr. Jamie all the time, or Dr. Zimmerman, and I'm like, sure.
I'm here, okay.
Yeah, I just don't correct them anymore.
Right. Pay me like a doctor, though.
God,
Please.
I wish.
But I couldn't do my doctor. I could do it, I don't want to.
It's a lot.
Let me rephrase.
Yeah, well, it's because I do surgery scheduling, so I'll get a call from a patient or an email like, oh, I'm supposed to be scheduling with Dr. Jamie. I'm like, I don't think you want me cutting you open.
No, right?
Fun fact, when I originally went to college, I wanted to be a surgeon.
Really?
And then I basically failed OChem.
Yeah, I've heard that's rough.
It's real fucking hard. Like, I literally got an email from my professor because I signed up for the second semester.
Yeah.
And I got, like, a C- the first semester. And he was like, yeah, I have two recommendations. One, either don't take the second semester, like, find something else to take, or hire yourself a tutor. And I was like, fuck you.
Damn.
So I changed majors, and...
Yeah, I couldn't be a doctor.
Nah.
Wes and I were having this conversation, actually, because I was like, I would be like, hold on, I need to take out my calculator to calculate how much medicine to give you. I would be constantly second-guessing myself.
Oh, same.
But it's scary business.
Yeah, no thanks.
No thanks.
I'm like, I'll leave that to the people I schedule for.
Yeah, right. For real.
The qualified professionals.
Hell yeah.
You went first last week.
I did.
So I'll go.
Right.
So mine is a longin.
You read a book for this.
I did read a book.
You guys. This is a big deal.
I read a book, however, per my usual standards, I did copy and paste a lot. No, I read the whole book.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'm actually looking at the book. I have the book in front of me.
She did. I'm going to read it after her.
Yes. Actually, the book was gifted to me by a friend of the show, Jackson Bishop.
Thanks, Jackson.
For my birthday.
Dude, he gifts the best stuff.
He really does. And actually, so he got me another book that went with this one. And it was Profitable Podcasting.
Ooh.
I know.
You guys, we don't make Jack doing this podcast, so.
In fact, we're losing money. I think, how many times can we say that?
I don't know. If you want to Venmo us, go ahead. Support the show.
We'll start a GoFundMe. So yeah, I read a book. Actually, I'm going to really quickly plug other things.
Okay, go for
in my other podcast, I also read books.
Ooh, like Harry Potter books, huh?
Just like Harry Potter books,
Hey.
in fact.
I love Harry Potter.
Actually, we should have you on one of these
You
days.
should. Fun fact, for my 25th birthday, we went to London to the Harry Potter studios
That's actually really fucking cool.
with me and all my friends. It was so fun. Like, literally one of the best days of my life.
I would probably shit my pants.
It was amazing! We were on the bus and we were like, oh my god, we're going to Harry Potter Studios!
I really want to go to Harry Potter World in Universal.
Me too. We should do that. Just take it on the road.
Let's fucking go.
Guys, donate, though. You have to donate. Just kidding. This kid I went to high school with was dating the girl who played Luna Lovegood on it. They're not anymore, but yeah, this guy I went to, he's actually like a model and a singer now. Yeah.
What the fuck?
He glowed up from high school. Really, though. Like, he's the nicest guy. But yeah,
That's
it
hella
was just
cool.
kind of crazy. So, like, I saw this BuzzFeed article one day, and it was, like, who they're dating now, like, who
Right.
this cast of Harry Potter's dating. And it was him, and I was like, no shit.
You're like, I know this man.
We follow each other on Instagram.
That's fucking weird.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But they don't date anymore, so.
Yikes. Unfortunate.
Yeah, I know.
So the book I read for this podcast, which, again, normally I do really poor homework.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Wikipedia, probably.
Probably. So I'm reading from Murderpedia.
Ooh.
Are you familiar with Murderpedia?
No, maybe I should be.
So, speaking of Jackson, he introduced me to, he's like, are you familiar with this? I was like, I knew.
We should be.
But, so basically, it's Wikipedia for serial killers.
Mm.
Well, I mean, like, just murderers in
I'm
general.
here for that.
Yeah. And it's, like, broken up by, like, you can break it up by, like, gender, like, by, like, where they did it, like, by their letter, their last name. Like, it's actually pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because, like, I could sit here and read you a 100-page book, but I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So this is a more condensed version, and it said it better than I can.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm reading off of this.
Okay.
But it's a long one, so buckle up, Buttercup.
Okay.
It's a doozy.
I'm buckled. Let's do this.
Oh, good. So the book was called it's still called that. It didn't change titles. It's the Peninsula Serial Killer: The True Story of John Scott Dunkel. So he is known as the Peninsula Serial Killer.
Okay. Which peninsula?
The, like, Bay Area Peninsula.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. There's a lot of them.
I mean, you're not wrong. Oh, shit. Okay. So he has been he has 3 confirmed victims.
Okay.
And there are some attempted murders that he also has. 2 for sure. And he's actually also a potential suspect for the missing persons case of Kevin Andrew Collins. Do you remember when I did him a few weeks ago? Or actually a couple months ago now. He was the kid that went missing in San Francisco.
The little kid?
Yes, the little kid who you could see the missing persons posters in the Terminator.
Yes. Yes, I do vaguely remember that.
Which, also gonna plug that screen recap that we did.
Yeah, do that. Read that. I mean, listen to that.
You're batting 1,000.
Just ignore me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read this little excerpt from the book.
Okay.
So John Dunkel's a potential suspect for the missing persons case of juvenile Kevin Andrew Collins. Kevin went missing in San Francisco from an area near where Dunkel lived. Some believe that he lured him to the Golden Gate Bridge and pushed him off.
Oh.
Similar bodies are swept away and lost to sea, which might explain why his body has never been recovered.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't he, like, really, like...
He was like 9 or 10.
Okay. Jeez.
Yeah. So, this guy is fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the too long don't read, he's fucked up.
All right.
So, okay. So, it starts with the disappearance of John Davies.
Okay.
In November of 1981, when Dunkel was 21 years old, he was a close friend of the Davies family, and they lived in Belmont, California, which is kind of near... Do you know where that is? No?
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
So it's like a very rich community.
I'm not... I mean, I'm familiar vaguely with the parts of the Bay Area that my friends live in.
So this is like San Mateo County, if that helps.
Okay.
Probably not much.
No.
But it's okay. I was like, I could see the look on your face. You're like, bitch, what?
Sure. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
We'll go with that.
Sure, Jan. That's my favorite GIF ever, by the way.
I know, it's good.
So he often visited the Davies residence and spent time with their 17-year-old son, Mark, and his brother, John, who was 15.
Okay.
On the morning of Sunday, November 8th, in 1981, James Davies, the father, called police to report his son, John, missing. Davies and his wife, Joan, had returned home around 1:30 a.m. and had noticed nothing amiss. Joan had found John missing when she opened his bedroom door sometime after 8:30 a.m. John had laid out his church clothes and had left behind all of his possessions, including his only pair of shoes.
He only had one pair of shoes?
So, in the book, it kind of talks about how he's kind of a particular kid.
Okay.
And, like, he only had, like, one pair of shoes at a time just because he was, like, kind of, like, quirky like that.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. One of my best friends, her brother, for the longest time, was basically the same way. So...
I wish I was, because I have, like, 50 pairs of shoes.
Bitch.
If we're being honest.
Right? And, like, I'm sure we only wear 3 of them on a regular.
Yeah. Probably.
Like, I think my shoe collection could be condensed to literally my Birkenstocks, maybe a pair
Which you're
of tan
wearing right
booties. I'm wearing the Birkenstocks right now. A pair of booties and maybe a pair of Uggs.
Yeah, I keep buying heels, and I don't know why, because I
You never
don't
wear them.
and I don't go anywhere to wear them.
See, I buy heels, and then I can't wear them because it makes me taller than Zach, and he gets really upset at me when I wear heels. Like, he looks at me, and he just gives me a really disapproving look, and I
See, Wes does too, but that's because I have a messed up ankle, right? So I had surgery last year, and when I wear heels, I'm clinging to Wes for dear life to make sure I don't twist my ankle again, because that would be incredibly painful.
yeah.
Considering that my ligaments were taken out and cut and put back together, and
Cute.
it would hurt real bad.
Yeah, and you actually need a second surgery, so...
I do. I'm
Good
having
point.
one in a couple weeks, guys, but I'm not gonna be gone again. So
No, I'm gonna make sure I take my happy ass up here and make you record with me.
Well, this surgery is gonna be a lot less than my last one. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah, good news. Anyways, continue.
So he usually informs his parents of his whereabouts, and according to them, was not the sort of child who would be expected to run away. James and Joan Davies unsuccessfully made extensive efforts to locate John for several years after he disappeared. Soon after the disappearance, James Davies called the defendant, Dunkel.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that's a fucking awful name.
Mhm.
If my last name was Dunkel, I'd change that shit right away.
Right.
So derpy.
Mm-hmm.
Derpy Dunkel.
Derpy Dunkel. Episode title.
Write that down. Where the fuck am I? I'm awful at this. So he called him to come over and help post flyers describing John. He came over on the Wednesday or Thursday after the Sunday that John was reported missing, and left with some flyers. He never visited the Davies family again. In the
Whoa.
book, they describe it as basically like Scott Peterson, how he went and looked for and posted flyers of his missing wife, even though he knew what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
So this kid went and posted posters of someone that he knew he killed.
Dang. That's cutthroat.
Yeah.
It happens a lot, though. People try to, stay under the radar.
1,000%.
But, damn, that's cold-blooded.
Yeah. Because, in the book also describes that he, kind of didn't really want to go, but he felt obligated to. So, which also, makes sense.
Yeah. Dang.
Mark Davies testified that before John disappeared, John Dunkel, that's annoying because, the kid's name is also John.
Yeah. 2 Johns.
Yes. So I'm just going to call him Dunkel.
Yeah.
Dunkel would come by the Davies residence in his white Honda automobile. If he came to visit in the evening, he'd throw rocks at Mark's window so that Mark could sneak out of the house without his parents' knowledge. John Dunkel and Mark Davies were really good friends. I think he was 21 when Mark was 17.
Okay.
They would sneak out and drink beer, smoke weed.
Yeah.
They did a lot of LSD together also.
Damn.
And sometimes John Davies would join them.
Okay.
Not always, but most of the time John kind of just tagged along.
Okay.
They would drive to the Hassler Hospital off of Woodside Road and Highway 280 to explore the partially abandoned grounds. Mark last saw his brother on Saturday, November the 7th at around 10:30 p.m. when Mark went to bed. Mark never heard from Dunkel after John's disappearance.
Wow.
It's they were really good friends. And
That's
then
so weird.
literally just,
I
goes
mean,
to the family.
dude, if you're gonna try to get away with it, then at least make appearances.
Right? Joan Davies testified that when that Dunkel visited her sons, they would often sit in the defendant's car listening to music. So during the daytime, they would just bop around and do dumb teenager shit.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, police theorized that John had run away. Belmont Police Detective Gerald Whaley contacted Dunkel in mid-1982 and told him that where him and John like to hang out. Because the Davies family reported that the Dunkel was John's close friend, Whaley contacted him often to try to get information out of him. By September of 1984, the police were treating the disappearance as a possible kidnapping and contacted the FBI for assistance.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of interesting that they waited so long to contact the FBI if they were having issues, because that was over 2.5 years later.
Yeah.
Or 2 years and a couple months.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Exactly.
I guess in the 80s it was different though.
Yeah, and the book kind of talks about that. They were they wanted to try to handle it themselves, and they weren't sure if it was a kidnapping or if he was a runaway.
Yeah.
Because back then, that was a thing.
And it was debatable.
Right.
If a kid, though, that blows my mind though. If a kid was thought to be a runaway, they'd just be like, oh well, they ran away.
Yeah,
But it's
sucks.
still a kid.
Yeah. Like, I don't care if you're 15 or
17.
Yeah.
Like, you're,
like, no, absolutely not.
But.
So in the first interview with the so Detective Whaley and the FBI agent Robert Dukinski, sure,
Yeah.
they interviewed Dunkel 2 times at his residence near Sacramento because he had moved to Sacramento to live with his sister and his sister's boyfriend, I believe.
Okay.
At the time, so he like noped out of Belmont real quick. Yeah. After he killed this kid, he was like,
he's not very sly.
No, not at all. In the first interview, he said that he denied seeing John on the night of his disappearance, claiming he did not leave his parents' home that evening, and he denied ever throwing rocks to summon Mark or John or sitting in his car in front of the house at all.
Okay.
The second time he was interviewed, they probed the discrepancies between the Davies family members and his accounts. He was empathetic that he had never thrown rocks, or that he had neither thrown rocks at the boys' bedroom windows or listened to music with them in the car that night. He also denied that he ever traveled with John to a hangout called the Morgue, which is on the hospital grounds.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's also extra creepy. The place that they would like hang out and like smoke weed is called the Morgue.
Okay. No thanks.
So now we're moving on to the second murder.
Okay.
On October 2nd of 1984, around 7 p.m., Belmont resident Margaret Turner called the police to report her 12-year-old son Lance missing from soccer practice. That day, Timothy O'Brien, which I believe was a neighbor or just like a family friend, had driven his 2 sons and Lance to the soccer practice at the fields behind Ralston Intermediate School. O'Brien began coaching his team and did not see Lance again. He coached like a neighboring team. Okay. So like, they were at the same soccer grounds, but on the other end of the field.
Yeah, okay. Right. Makes sense.
So yeah, he never saw Lance again. Later, when practice ended, O'Brien asked Lance's coach, Ray Williamson, where Lance was, and he told him that Lance never went to practice that day. Several boys reported seeing Lance heading towards Water Dog Lake, about 3/8 of a mile from the soccer field. A search then followed. William Russell arrived at 6 p.m. to pick up his son from soccer practice, and then took his son home and joined the search for Lance. Around 8:20 p.m., he shone a flashlight onto some bushes in a gully off the path to Water Dog Lake and saw feet sticking out of the bushes.
Oh.
Lance's body was found under the overgrown bushes.
That's awful.
Pathologist Peter Benson, MD, testified that Lance had died from blood loss due to multiple stab wounds. 2 wounds to the heart were each fatal. 2 other wounds to the lungs were potentially life-threatening as well. There were numerous defensive wounds to the arms and hands, as well as scratches, scrapes, and bruises. So, like, in the book, it talks about how he, like, really fucking fought for his life.
That's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's so weird. Now that I have my own kid, like, things like this make me so much more, like, sad than they used to.
Yeah.
Like,
it hits closer to home.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, because you can imagine it happened to your kid, and I literally would die.
Yeah.
Like, I would die. It's awful.
Stephanie Olson, Kendra Durham, and Nicole Gerthy, students at Ralston Intermediate School at the time of the homicide, testified that around 3 p.m. on October 2nd, they had left school skipping volleyball practice and went down to the lake to smoke cigarettes. A man whom Stephanie described as having dirty blonde hair, pimples, dirty teeth, and a retainer.
Oh, God.
I know, yikes.
Poor guy. No wonder he's a serial killer.
Oh my God. Just kidding. You're not, but it's okay.
I'm not. I'm not at all.
The man approached them and started a conversation. He told them that his name was John and that he had graduated from Carlmont High School the year before. He was drinking a beer from a tall Budweiser can, and he offered some to the girls. In the book, it talks about how like they each kind of took a sip, and it was like warm and flat, and they were like, ick.
Right.
And then in the book, it also talks about how they like smoked a little weed with him, and then like later dazed.
Okay.
The girls left after around 20 minutes. Another student saw a man with the dirty blonde hair near Water Dog Lake around 4 p.m. None of these witnesses were asked to identify the defendant in the courtroom. Olson, Durham, and Gerthy gave the police a description of the man that was incorporated into a composite drawing that was used in the investigation of the homicide. In his confession to the FBI agents at a later time, he describes talking to the girl shortly before he killed Turner.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
That's awful.
Mm-hmm. On December 27th of 1984, Belmont Police Detective Sergeant James Goulart interviewed Dunkel concerning the Turner homicide. He was by then the only suspect in the crime. Detective Goulart asked him of his constitutional rights. He agreed to talk with him. He denied having been at Water Dog Lake on October 2nd, claiming he had been at home until noon and then had gone to some stores in Redwood, California, or Redwood City, California, to fill out employment applications.
From Sacramento?
So at this time, he was back in Belmont.
That's still kind of far, isn't it?
Yeah, Redwood City is a bit of a distance. It's not too far from Belmont, but it's like, I think within an hour. Mm-hmm. But that's still kind of like far to apply for jobs when you're like 21.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and he came home by the bus at 4:30 p.m. Later, police contacts with those businesses turned up no such employment applications.
Yeah.
Because he never fucking did that.
Right. Sketchy.
January of the next year, in an effort to gather information about the Turner homicide, Belmont police officer Lisa Thomas began working undercover at the Sacramento Carl's Jr. restaurant where the defendant was employed at the time.
Okay.
So he ended up getting a job at Carl's Jr.
Okay.
#winner. There she encountered Dunkel several times a week. She regularly visited him at his sister's house where he was residing, and sometimes went to a bar or a movie with him. He also spoke with Thomas about newspaper reports on the investigations, at one point showing her a collection of clippings. So it's not weird at all that he had all these like newspaper clippings from this, murder investigation from his hometown.
Not at all.
Not weird at all.
Not even a little bit.
Nope, totally normal. And then you're gonna show a girl that you think is cute, like,
right?
What?
Okay, he's not very brilliant. He's no Ted Bundy.
No, and so in the book it describes him as being mentally ill to an extent.
Yeah.
I'll talk about it more later, but he in the book it says that he describes it as like a computer in his brain that was malfunctioning all the time.
Interesting.
Very.
Okay.
Yeah. Very weird man.
Yeah. I'd say so.
February 9th of 85, Dunkel had told Officer Thomas that the police and FBI had been in his home for 5 hours confronting him and that they lied to him. He also maintained his innocence to Thomas, claiming that on the day that Turner was killed that he had gone to Redwood City. He seemed impressed with the attention that he was getting from the FBI. Like, he thought it was cool that he was a suspect, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
In May of the following year, James and Joan Davies met with Dunkel for several hours seeking information about John. He said that he had none. Joan Davies met with him again in July of that year, and he continued to insist he had no information. In September of 1986, Charles Rice told Michael Wiley, a law enforcement investigator for the state of California, that the defendant had admitted to killing John Davies and Lance Turner. So Charles Rice was his... so at this point, he had gone to jail for burglary.
Okay.
And Charles Rice was his cellmate.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so they would talk a lot, and he would brag to him about killing these kids. Yeah. Yeah, it was a prison in San Luis Obispo. It was a burglary conviction that was... Hold on, I'm so sorry, I lost my place.
You're fine.
Anyways, so Wiley testified that Rice voluntarily made a statement asking nothing in return and insisted on trying to obtain further information from the defendant because he was appalled by the killings. Because basically, I don't know if you know, I mean, you probably do because like your mom kind of works in the system. Mm-hmm. So child offenders are the worst kind of offenders within prison. So
I took a criminal justice class, and our teacher referred to them as chomos, and that they would almost always they would be targeted in prison.
Yeah. And so if you killed or molested a child, you're the biggest piece of shit. Yeah. Which, I mean, duh.
You are.
But,
yeah.
But it's just kind of funny to me that other criminals would be there's a hierarchy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's shit you don't do.
Yeah. So Charles Rice was just he's fucked up. I want him to suffer.
Yeah.
Which is pretty admirable.
Yeah.
All things considered, because it's almost worse to be a snitch.
That's true. They're pretty much in prison.
In the book it talks about how he wanted to cooperate with the FBI, but he was afraid.
Right. He probably didn't want to get effed up.
No. And like I said, he was doing initially he went in and he was oh, I don't want anything in return. I don't want a reduced sentence. But then once things got further down the line, he asked for some favors.
Protect me.
Right.
Help me.
On September 22nd of 1986, Rice gave investigators 2 maps drawn by Dunkel of the crime scenes of where he killed both boys. A week later, he met with Rice, who was wearing a wireless transmitter, and described the Davies and Turner murders in graphic detail. He refused to report the crimes to the Belmont police because he didn't trust them. He said that he did trust the FBI, however, so Rice told him that he had a friend who was an FBI agent and could help him if he confessed to him. Prison officials arranged to find an FBI agent to take the confession. On October 3rd of 86, FBI Special Agent Frank Hickey and Daniel Payne interviewed him at the state prison in San Luis Obispo. Rice was also present. He was advised of his constitutional rights and signed a waiver. The defendant stated that before killing John Davies, he was at Half Moon Bay with 3 friends, drinking whiskey and smoking marijuana. And then he drove to the Davies residence, parked a few doors down the street, and entered through an unlocked door. He went to John's bedroom and invited him to come drink beer with him. Mm-hmm. John agreed, went with him to Edgewood Park in Redwood City near the Crystal Springs Reservoir. John was wearing a black t-shirt, blue corduroy pants, and no socks or shoes. Again, his only pair of shoes were at home.
Yeah, okay. Fair. Fair.
Don't forget.
Fair.
Sorry, I lost where I was at. Oh, he parked near a shooting range, and then before leaving the car, removed a knife from the glove compartment. At that point, he committed himself to killing John. They walked a half a mile, 2 mile, and then a half a mile to 2 miles down a dirt road. He then stabbed John in the back, sat on his chest, stabbed him in the throat.
That's so awful.
When he struggled, he picked up a large rock and struck him in the head.
Jeez.
He then drugged the body to an opening in the ground, pushed it in, and left the scene, later disposing of his blood-stained clothing. A week after the murder, he returned to the area and observed that the body was bloated and animals were feeding on it. In May of 1984, he returned again and observed a skull.
Jeez.
When he was asked about a motive for killing John Davies, he said that when he drank beer and smoked marijuana, he became very aggressive. He also noted that John used to cause a computer monitor to flash irritating statements that he would observe, and that also angered him.
Huh.
He drew a map for the investigators illustrating where John's remains were.
That's awful.
Regarding the murder of Lance Turner, he stated that on October 2nd, 1984, he was in the process of moving from Belmont to Sacramento. On that day, he bought a 6-pack of beer and went to the park, near Water Dog Lake to drink. Around 2:30, after some 3 or so hours at the lake, he went to an area near Ralston School. He climbed a tree known as the Smoker's Tree and used his buck-type hunting knife to stab at it. 3 junior high school age girls came to the tree looking for a pack of cigarettes and dug up a matchbook with a distinctive inscription. The girls shared his last beer, and one of them offered him a marijuana cigarette. At one point, he saw a boy wearing athletic clothes run down the hill. After the girls left, he stayed for another 5 minutes, and then as he headed back towards the dock, he saw the boy jogging to that area. To get his attention, he asked him what time it was. The boy said that it was around 3:50, and then turned away. As he turned, the defendant stabbed him in the side with his hunting knife. The boy struggled as the defendant stabbed him a second time, and then went to the ground and complied with his command to put his leg down. I know.
It's so sad.
In the course of the struggle, the boy hit Dunkel so severely on the thumb that he later lost his thumbnail.
Jeez.
He stabbed him again in the throat and yet a 4th time near the heart. The boy then appeared dead. He moved the body under some low bushes and went home. He disposed of the knife and sheath in his separate places and discarded his shoes out of concern that the shoe prints could be identified. And actually, one of the investigators did see a footprint, but it wasn't like a complete one.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess the shoes were never recovered. So
yeah.
He correctly described a birthmark on the back of the boy's neck as well. Using a map that he had drawn, the Belmont police searched for his remains and found the items of clothing, bones, and a skull. A forensic pathologist who examined the skull testified that it was consistent of that with the young Caucasian male and bore evidence of blunt force trauma that could have been inflicted by a large rock. Mm-hmm. Orthodontist Stan Wolkin compared x-rays of the patient, his patient John Davies, with x-rays of the remains, finding similarities between the two. On October 6th of 1984, the defendant led investigators to a field near Carmichael, near a Carmichael residence, and pointed out the shrubbery where he had discarded the knife that he used to kill Lance Turner. With the help of a metal detector, investigators found the knife.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
On 2 occasions in October of 1986 for 45 minutes and 5 hours, respectively, psychiatrist James Missett met with Dunkel at the request of the DA's office. Dr. Missett read his constitutional rights, and the Dunkel had waived them. He described having an interest in reading newspaper accounts of killings when he was in elementary school. He stopped doing so in 5th grade because homicides weren't a part of my everyday scene. In the 6th grade, he became aware that he wanted to kill someone after watching a movie in which an older boy was able to kill a younger boy to prevent him from disclosing a diary containing references to other murders.
Wow.
Yeah. About the Davies murder, he said, I thought to myself, you've got someone out in the middle of nowhere, here's your chance to kill somebody you've thought about killing before.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's obviously pretty sick.
Yeah. After describing how he initially stabbed Davies, defendant told Dr. Missett that he had pinned Davies down with his knees on his shoulders, and when he was asking what he was planning to do, he said that he was going to kill him. He told Davies to scream all he wanted before stabbing him in the throat. He said he stopped to think about whether he wanted to go through with it before he picked up a rock and then hit him 3 times on the side of his head.
Jesus.
Yeah. It's fucking bananas.
Yeah, it's awful.
So, this is now kind of trial stuff.
Okay.
So, the prosecution introduced evidence that he had attempted in separate incidents to kill 2 other boys, Steve Murphy and Monty Hansen, and he had also committed a 3rd murder of Sean Daniel. The prosecution also presented evidence that he had threatened to kill a jail nurse and when he was in prison for the robbery.
Okay.
So, here's the attempted murder of Stephen Murphy.
Okay.
On November 5th of 1982, 16-year-old Steve Murphy attended a party at a friend's house in San Mateo. Leaving the party around 11:30 at night, he walked to another friend's home. He said it was about 15 to 20 houses down the street. And then, all of a sudden, he lost consciousness. He woke after daylight the next morning near a large dirt area surrounded by trees. He fell unconscious again and woke up in a hospital, discovering that his spleen and a kidney had been surgically removed.
Ooh.
He spent the next 3 weeks in the hospital with broken ribs and a broken pelvis. His injuries caused him to miss months of school.
Damn.
In October of 1986, San Mateo police officer Joseph Farmer spoke with Dunkel about the assault on Murphy. He admitted that he had been drinking alcohol at the beach before driving his car up the hill on 42nd Avenue in San Mateo. He saw someone walking on the avenue and made 2 or 3 right turns to encounter the person again.
Mm-hmm.
He deliberately ran over that person, put him in the back of his car, and drove to an isolated area in Belmont at the Marburger turnaround. He took the person out of the car and laid him on the roadway. He referred to the person as Steve Murphy, but didn't explain how he knew the victim's name.
Jeez.
And he's never admitted to, knowing who he was or anything like that.
That's creepy.
Mm-hmm. And now the other attempted murder. In 1982, Monty Hansen, then 16 years old, often went out drinking with Dunkel, they were friends.
Yeah.
On New Year's Eve of that year, Hansen had invited him to come to a party at his house while his parents were away.
Mm-hmm.
He arrived shortly before midnight and apparently under the influence of alcohol, and told Hansen that he felt dizzy. He told him to drink some water and then went to the backyard to smoke a cigarette. There, he turned to observe Dunkel approaching him with a 2x4, studded with nails and a raised hand.
Jeez.
He struck at Hansen with the board. 1 blow hit him in the head, but Hansen blocked the rest of the blows with his forearm. He says that Dunkel was smiling as he was attacking Hansen. He then re-entered the house, and Hansen saw him put a knife back in the kitchen cabinet. Hansen screamed at him to get out and told him that he would kill him if he harmed his little brother, who was sleeping in his bedroom. He ran towards the car, and Hansen never saw him again. On February 28th of 1985, when Officer Lisa Thomas was undercover,
Mm-hmm.
She had told him a false story about her involvement in a hit-and-run accident, and he then told her how he had run over Steve Murphy and assaulted Monty Hansen. A recording of the conversation was played for the jury during the trial.
Damn.
Yeah. So now, the 3rd murder.
Okay.
The 3rd confirmed murder.
Yeah.
Around 6 p.m. on July 2nd of 1985, 12-year-old Sean Daniel, I think that's how it's pronounced, I'm not 100% honest.
Okay.
He went to a friend's house in Sacramento, riding on his bike. When he didn't return home by 9 p.m., his mother called the friend's house and then learned that Sean had left around 7:30. His father and mother and her husband searched for him. His body was found 6 days later at Lower Sunrise Park. A board with a nail in it and a beer can were found at the scene.
Oh, wow.
An autopsy revealed that the cause of death were 2 stab wounds to the heart, 1 penetrating a rib, caused by something thick, pointed and dense, which was consistent with a marijuana pipe. Sean had also suffered a perforating wound to the skull consistent with the nail-embedded board. There was insect activity in the facial and neck area, suggested there was some sort of wound there.
Yuck.
Yuck is right. Sacramento detective Robert Bell questioned Dunkel on July 5th of 1985. He said that he didn't know anything about the missing boy, but he admitted that on July 2nd, he was on a bicycle trail at Lower Sunrise Park drinking beer with friends until about 8:30 p.m., and then he rode home. He claimed that a flat tire prevented him from arriving home before 10 p.m. Anton Martinez and Paul Stanley confirmed they were on the bicycle trail with him at that day, drinking beer and smoking weed until they left around sunset. Mm-hmm. After Sean's body was found, Detective Bell contacted Dunkel, who agreed to accompany investigators to the police station. He denied knowing anything about Sean's murder. Investigators drove him to his sister's residence where he was staying. He and his sister agreed to search the home. They found no evidence. He then later voluntarily returned to the police station to provide hair, blood, and saliva samples. The next day, he showed Detective Bell where on the trail that he had a flat tire on his bicycle, and where him and his friends had met to drink beer. He also assisted investigators in searching for the missing marijuana pipe, and accompanying them to several smoke shops and finding the one that he said resembled the one that he had lost. On July 15th, he telephoned Detective Bell to tell them that Paul Stanley's blood might be found on the defendant's bicycle because he had fallen and might have blood on it.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. In an effort to get him to confess, undercover narcotics officer Ronald Ghosh, posed as Ron Cross, left a letter at his house. The letter advised that Cross lived near the river and that police were pressuring him, and he knew what Dunkel had done, and he would be communicating with them again. He gave the letter to Detective Bell. Officer Ghosh left another letter and called Dunkel about 4 days later, asking him to meet with him. He said that he knew about the board and the other stuff and wanted money, or he would go to the police and give them the evidence, adding that he needed the money to avoid his own arrest. He did not respond, did not appear where he had requested him to go.
So he was like, I don't care.
He was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna...
do what you gotta do.
Exactly. After he was questioned about the Ron Cross information, he telephoned Detective Bell, upset at the course of the investigation. In the course of the conversation, Dunkel had asked hypothetically what might happen if he had confessed to the crime. He also asked, hypothetically, that if he were at the scene and saw the victim screaming and took no action to save him, whether his inaction would get him in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would.
The Department of Corrections Sergeant Michael Wiley took Charles Rice's report of the defendant's confessions on September 28th of 1986 in Wiley's office. He had overheard Dunkel describe to Rice, who was wearing a wireless microphone, the murders of all three boys. Following Dunkel's agreement to confess to the murders of the FBI, Special Agents Frank Hickey and Daniel Payne asked him about the Daniel murder. Charles Rice was also present during this interview. He said that on July 2nd of 1985, he left his home around 11:30 in the morning and rode his bicycle to the park, where he met an acquaintance, Anton. They bought some beer and went to Anton's house, where another friend met them. The three rode their bikes back to the park and smoked marijuana and continued to keep drinking beer. He drank 4 tall beers and 3 12-ounce cans of beer as well. At 8:30, they parted, and he rode his bicycle to Avista Point. He saw Sean Daniel riding his bicycle towards Sunrise Boulevard, commenting to Agent Hickey, I knew right then I was going to stop him and kill him.
Wow.
He chased after Sean, ramming Sean's bicycle with his own. When Sean fell off his bike, he grabbed his arm and led him to a large tree. Sean cooperated, causing Dunkel to want to humiliate him over his pleas that he didn't hurt him. He forced Sean to take off his clothes and put them in a pile. A 2x4 laid in the area. He put it over Sean's eyes and had him laid on his back. He was carrying an electrician's instrument with a pick, which he thrust into his chest near his heart.
Jeez.
After Sean protested, then Dunkel had promised not to hurt him. He put a hand over his mouth and stabbed him again, causing the blade of the instrument to separate from the handle. Dunkel then retrieved the blade, screwed it back into the handle, and stabbed Sean in his eyes.
That's cutthroat.
Yeah. He then rode his bicycle home, removing the handle from the pick along the way and discarding the pieces separately. At home, he washed his clothes and buried his bloody socks in a flower bed near a library about 3 blocks from his house. He signed a written statement incorporating this confession, drew a map of the crime scene, and gave a sketch of the pick tool. And
so he knew what he was doing.
1,000%. He was convicted and then sentenced to death.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Yuck.
Super yuck.
What a terrible person.
True grade A piece of shit.
Yeah. That's so sad.
Yeah. That's it for that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
at least they caught him.
Exactly.
Because he obviously would have kept
He would have kept going.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he constantly was just like, yeah, like my brain doesn't work. It's like a computer that like keeps flashing images and it just doesn't work right. It's fucking weird.
Well, okay.
So yeah, your turn. Hope yours is lighter.
It's not.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't involve children.
That's good.
But it does. Yeah. Okay. So this is the one I tried to do when we had that episode that didn't work. Right?
Ah, yes, the lost episode.
Yes. So this one is about Sherilyn Murphy. It took place in September of 1994.
Wait, that's when I was born.
Yeah, I was 2.5. You're a baby.
Is there a date?
No.
Okay, just kidding.
Because they don't know
Exactly when?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go on.
She was living on Watt Avenue in Sacramento. She was working as a prostitute at the time.
Okay.
She had relocated from Sacramento from, I believe, Washington, where her family, like, mostly lived, but they had, like, come back and, like, relocated in Sacramento. She left her apartment one morning. She told her boyfriend that she'd be back in a little while, and he never saw her again. I believe he had a roommate, too. And, oh, maybe not. Nope, just kidding. Ignore that. So she left, never saw her again. October of 1994, so I'm not sure, like, how many weeks had passed, but obviously, like...
Enough.
Yeah. A portion of her dismembered body was found on the banks of New Melones Reservoir. So the portion they're referring to are her hands.
Ew.
They found in a plastic bag washed up on the shore. And they didn't know who they belonged to. Like, there was no other parts of her body, right, found. They didn't even, obviously, like, know it was her. So this New Melones Reservoir is near Angels Camp in Calaveras County, which is kind of like hometown murder.
Yeah.
It's about 2 hours southeast of capital city, Sacramento. So that's pretty far to go. You know, from where she was living to, like, be found in Angels Camp.
I just had a really fucked up joke in my head, but I'm going to say it.
Okay, say it.
But just looks like someone caught those hands.
Okay.
I thought about not saying it.
Ignore
but
we're
like,
laughing.
Yeah.
Ignore that. We have respect. We do have respect.
We do.
We do. It's just sometimes you have to make jokes about it. Okay. This area, so like Angels Camp is a really small town. There's literally 2 stoplights, one of which was pretty recent. So probably the time this happened, it was a 1 stoplight kind of town. Yes. So that makes it like it's very odd that this type of violent crime would happen there.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't normally. Also, where she was found is in the outskirts of Angels Camp in a remote forest area. So it wasn't like it was in town or like near town, or like it was near the lake, but it's remote. The hands, it's interesting. I mean, people go down there, but like not really.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not somewhere you would go unless you're like a local or you know the area well. So December 1994, some kids were home from college. They were working on their family's remote property near Camp 9. If you're from the area, you'll know where Camp 9 is because, you know, people go out, like, drink beer, go swimming. It's like a swimming hole, kind of hang out because it is remote, so you can, like, go out there and you're underage and do shit. And
sounds like you've had many a wild night there.
I actually have not, but it was because my mom would never let me go out there. She knew better. I think I've been out there one time, like, to swim. Nothing hanky going on, just swimming. Anyways, like I said, most locals know about it. It's really beautiful in the summertime to go out there. But it is kind of creepy. Like, if you don't know where you're going, you'll get lost for sure. Like, I've been out there and I can't even tell you now. Like, it's been so long. I couldn't even tell you how to get out there
Perfect.
now. So yeah, so this guy named Chad, he was working on his family's property out there in December of 1994 when he found a dismembered female body. She was missing her head and her hands. So
I don't like that at all.
Because they had found the hands 2 months prior, obviously it doesn't take like a rocket scientist to figure. They probably go with his body. The hands and where the body was found aren't far from each other at all. The coroner performed the autopsy on the victim and confirmed that the hands did belong to the body. Her cause of death was multiple stab wounds. Her head and her hands were removed post-mortem, thankfully. Her head has never been recovered.
Holy shit.
Yes. They did identify her, though. Calaveras County District Attorney Investigator John Crawford worked really hard to find out who she was. Thankfully, they did find her hands. They were able to identify her using fingerprints, though it took like a year.
Good God.
He used the DOJ's fingerprint system.
Yeah.
And she was identified as Sherilyn Mivon Murphy, originally of Tacoma, Washington. She was only 24 years old. So she was obviously like not local to Calaveras County. So it's weird that it's just weird.
Yeah.
Because if she was killed in Sacramento, to drive 2 hours to a remote area to like dump a body, and it's nonetheless a remote area you wouldn't know about if you weren't familiar with the area. Because you will get lost out there. Like it's.
So it had to have been someone that lived there.
Yeah, or was very familiar with it. Out there.
Yuck.
They said she'd kind of fallen in with a bad crowd and gotten hooked on drugs, and she was like working as a prostitute. And then she moved. That was before she moved to Sacramento. She moved to Sacramento, still working as a prostitute. I'm not sure like the drug situation, but her boyfriend and her ex-boyfriend were both interviewed and ruled out as suspects. So they literally have no idea who did this to her.
Good God.
It's still an open case. It's one of 2 in Calaveras County. They never found her head. They
That's spooky.
Yeah. It's nasty.
Yeah.
So that's all mine. It's very
Wowzers.
short. No other information. Like there's a really good article which I use as my source from Calaveras Enterprise. It's like a 2-part, and it goes all into like her family life and like her as a person. It's I think oftentimes people are like, oh well, she's they were a prostitute, like that's a dangerous job, but like you forget they're people, and like so what?
Exactly. It's like I don't want to get like too like political or like weird or whatever, but it's like, oh, like she put herself in that situation because like she was a sex worker and whatever, like who cares what happens to her, but like she's a person.
Yeah. And who cares? I mean, like
a job's a job's a job,
and we all have sex, so
you're the one with a child, so
oops. Yeah, so it's just really sad, and it's such a thing to do to somebody.
Yeah, like cut off their fucking head. Like that's personal.
And you have to have a stomach for that.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of
that's a commitment.
Yes.
So it's like not easy to decapitate somebody.
No, it is not. And they didn't comment about the wound. I mean, there's really not a lot of information about the body itself, but yeah, it's
also if it was like washed up, like it was probably.
Well, the hands were washed up, but the body was not. The body was found out in the woods, but the hands were found on the river. But the hands were in a plastic bag, so I think that's why they could get like fingerprints off of them.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, they might be like swollen or like weird, but.
Yeah, I read they were like in a plastic bag.
Ew.
So. Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah, so if you, like we always say, people who listen to us are normally, like, around our age, probably, we're assuming, but, and so you would either be not born or just born or very young in 1994, but your family wasn't, so...
Yeah, and I mean, that's literally right where you grew up, too, so it's like, it's possible that someone that you grew up with is a fucking murderer.
Right.
Or, like...
knows. But, like, even so, some people might know something they just don't even think is related and could be. But, yeah, it was probably, like, a John who was familiar with Calaveras County and knew where, I mean, if you knew that you could dump a body and relatively not get caught, that's a good place to do it.
I mean, yeah.
Unfortunately. Remote. But yeah.
Yikes on fucking bikes.
I know.
Well, do you have anything fun and fresh to share?
It's not fun, but I'm reading. I mean, it is fun, but it's like not happy fun.
Happier
I'm
than this, hopefully.
reading The Killer Across the Table by John Douglas. It's the Mindhunter guy.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about that.
So good so far. I've only read like a chapter, but his writing is just so, it pulls you in. It's so good. So I would recommend it. It's new. It's like a 2019 book.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's not like Mindhunter where it was written like 15 years ago.
Right. Well, actually, so Zach and I just started season 2 of Mindhunter.
It's so good. I know. I was on maternity leave when it dropped, and I was like, yeah. I watched it all in like 2 days, though. That was kind of a problem.
So yeah, I think we're on the second episode.
It's good. I feel like it's not as good as the first season.
First season's so fucking good, though. Like, it's
It
hard. I
is.
feel like it's hard to like top it.
It is, but it's still a really good show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they go into the Atlanta child murders in
Ooh.
the second season. So after you watch it, we should talk about it because I have some thoughts.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Into it.
Me too. Anyway, that's it for me.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We just finished the like most recent season of The Good Place on Netflix.
Yeah, that's good. I
She's
like.
great.
I love Kristen Bell. She's my favorite.
I fucking love her
human.
so much.
So
And Jamila Jamil is awesome too.
yes, and Ted Danson. I love him too.
It's a great show. If you haven't watched it, it's excellent.
It is. It's a happy show.
Yeah.
I don't normally watch shows like that. I normally like
Me
shows
either.
with like murder and crime, and it's not that. So
Right.
if you need something happy.
Something light. Yeah, that's really good. I don't think I'm really watching anything else new. Me and Zach like will get really drunk and watch old Jeopardy
Ah!
because they have like
That's
like
funny.
old Jeopardy on Netflix,
Oh, really?
like 1970s and 1980s Jeopardy.
Dang.
It's everything.
I don't know if I could do it.
This,
I could watch
a lot of them are actually like I'm like, oh, I know that, I know
Yeah.
that. Like the questions aren't as hard, I don't think.
That's funny.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of fun to watch when you
know they
just need something on,
True.
especially if you want to scream answers at the television, like I
I'd
do.
love to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I have to. We'll catch you next week for
Yeah.
some new exciting.
We gotta do it. Figure out what we're gonna do for a screen recap.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
If you have any suggestions, DM us or comment on our socials and let us
Yeah.
know what true crime adjacent.
Be active,
Things.
y'all.
Yeah.
We need some comment. Now I'm back. I want to hear your opinions and comments and suggestions.
Heck yeah.
And please go rate, review, subscribe on iTunes.
And wherever you listen, it helps
Please.
with the algorithms.
Like a lot.
Yeah.
Pretty please.
I actually I found this website where it like kind of gives you like data, and we're actually like doing like pretty decent in true crime charts,
Oh,
especially like overseas, like Sweden and Denmark.
that's cool. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody there.
Nor do I. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, shout out to you.
Yeah.
It really does help us though to rate us.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk about like going through if you guys like leave comments or something and like picking somebody for a giveaway or something.
Yeah.
If y'all need some enticement.
Yeah, maybe. How about this? If you write us a review once a month, we will go through the reviews
Boom.
and we will
Choose-
pick someone to win something.
Choose a winner. Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, so write us a fucking review.
Yes. Please. Do it.
Tell us what you like or don't like, but be nice because
Yeah.
Jess is a new mom.
Yeah, I'm hormonal still. I'll cry.
Yeah, or your boobs might leak. I don't know.
That too. It's rough.
Yeah,
All right.
follow us on social media, and we'll catch you next week with
Yeah.
something new and exciting and fresh.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.